This is the Lean Builders Hoots on the Ground podcast with absolutely, positively no bullshito. Join us as we dig into exactly what lean construction is and how we can use these concepts and strategies in the field. This podcast will be different as we journey to job sites and mine the minds of lean builders, all in effort to pass forward building knowledge from those who have put their time in to learn a better way. Because that's just what lean builders do. What's up, Lean Builder Nation? It's Adam Hoots back again for another Lean Builder Hoots on the Ground with no bullshito. And I've brought my friends, Miss Julie Dolan and Mr. Brian Winningham. Say hello to the people, y'all.
Hello
people. To the people, y'all.
Yeah, you remember last time. We also have the OG Lean Builder himself, Mr. Buddy Brumley. Buddy, say what's up.
Howdy, everybody.
Super excited today. We are going to dive into the first episode of construction suicide prevention. We had promised you last week, and this first one is really important to me. I know I've got stories on it. I know Buddy's got story. We've all got a story about that temporary fence that we've battled either here or there. And excited today for Ranger Winnie, also known as Brian Winningham. He's got some amazing poetry, stories, just some writings out here. This is the one we're going to dive in today. And I'd really love to have Ranger Winnie, if you could maybe read this for us. And then, Buddy, I'd love to get just your initial reaction. So, yeah, feel free, Ranger Winnie, take it away. My man.
All right. This is called temporary fence panels. It's 6:27 a.m., and I'm pulling onto the site, half asleep at the wheel. I don't remember any of the ride getting from my driveway to here. One day it will be the death of me, and frankly, it scares me no end. My truck and I will go straight like Billy did, instead of around the bend. It's 11:30 a.m. and I'm having leftovers in my 10th coffee for lunch. The others are out eating street tacos and drinking rum punch. I'm not really sure how I ended up in this role each and every day, but someone must stay and make sure the workers won't melt away. It's 3:31 p.m. and most of the trades are all heading for home. In another hour, the super, assistant, and PE will also be gone. Not me, though. I'm so far from finished, I can't even see the middle. If you're behind from the start, then why isn't much of a riddle. It's 5:17 p.m., and there are miles and miles left until I'm done. Report after report that I still have to finish and run. Paying dues, I understand, but this feels more like just missing out. I pay all the bills for it, yet barely get to see the inside of my house. It's 7:22 p.m., and I have once again missed my family dinner. My spouse is a saint, but I can feel her patience growing ever thinner. She basically takes the role of single parent in all but legality, a story told so regularly in this industry as to make it a banality. It's 8:37 p.m., and I'm still at the damned construction site. Another lost evening of missing kissing my kids goodnight. The last person on site, before I leave, I must check all the gates. A daunting task in this twilight hour, just after 8:30. It's 10:14 p.m., and I'm sweaty and dirty, and I ripped up my pants. I cursed, I yelled, I pleaded, I cried, I went on one hell of a rant. Half of the temporary fence panels had all been half blown down. My unhappy reality is I'll be back in 8 hours to go another round.
When I first heard that, it really got my blood going. I'm really curious, Buddy, what are you thinking right now? Where are you at right now, buddy?
I got that same emotions that I got when I read it the first time. That could have just about had my name on it as That's my life. That's my life. I hate my job sometimes, and that's an emotional roller coaster that Brian took me back on again. So
Yeah, that was powerful. What are those emotions that come up?
all of the family thing, and I've been married 40 years last month, and you know,
Congratulations.
Yes.
yeah, but I know this job creates a strain on families, but it is something because a lot of people don't make it just because of the sacrifices that we do make. And there's always a way to say you can delegate it off to somebody else, but it's not as easy as that. We can't work from home. We're essential. We were the ones that had to come in during the COVID. We didn't get to stay home and work from home. The bad thing about it too, for me, is that and it's being a workaholic is what it amounts to, but it started for me when I was about 11 or 12 years old with the paper route and negative influences from home saying you're not going to amount to much, and spending the next 50 years trying to prove people wrong. So that creates the environment that I let myself be in, whether I like it or not. I I told my boss last year, a couple of years ago, so I'm tired of working Saturdays and I shouldn't have to anymore. And he said, I agree 100%. But he said, I don't think you can do it. And I started laughing with him and I said, you're right. If something's going on the job, I think I got to be there. And it's because if it doesn't happen, I'm the one that gets blamed first. And so there's a lot of emotions that Brian, anybody pulls up Brian's poems, every one of them you can relate to. So I challenge people to, besides this one, go back and look at some of the other ones. Keep telling Brian he's got to come out with a book because he's got a way of writing and telling stories.
Amen, brother. I agree with that 100%. So when's that book coming, Vinny?
Uh, uh, I don't know right now. I don't know if I'm going to write a book of poetry or just keep putting it out there for free like I do. It's a platform. It doesn't cost a whole lot. It's a way for me to get my stuff out there. So just a little bit of a note about what I've been doing. I didn't write for over 25 years. I stopped. I wrote when I was younger. I wrote in college when I was younger, but I stopped for 25 years. And just recently, in the past few years, I picked it up again. And I just don't know why I quit. Hadn't been able to figure that out. I love putting words together that allow people to see things and allow people to think about things in new ways, maybe, or evoke a memory or an emotion or something like that. That means a lot.
Well, these words got me like super fired up. But before I dive in and tell you how it made me feel, Miss Julie, I'm super curious where you're at with just hearing this and Buddy's response. What are you thinking?
I'm the face of collateral damage here. I've never set up temporary fence panels, right? I'm on the design side of this equation, but I am a mother and a wife of the construction industry. And I highlighted what really resonated with me here. It's 7:22 p.m. and I have once again missed my family dinner. My spouse is a saint, which I assure you we are not saints, but I feel her patience growing ever thinner. She basically takes the role of single parent in all but legality. So true. A story told so regularly in this industry is to make it a banality. So raw, Brian. It's so true. And I'm so angry myself about being there. And I'm not angry at you, and I'm not angry at Buddy, and I'm not angry at Adam. But I just wonder, I think about mental health and substance abuse when I read this poem. And there's a debate which begets the other. Do you use substance abuse to help you with your mental health issues, or is your substance abuse causing mental health issues? I wonder, are you workaholics and you need the work, or do you need the abuse of this industry? I guess I wonder, why do you take it? Because you see the damage done.
There's the pride thing, right? Pride is so prevalent in this industry. I got into a competition once with a superintendent. And it wasn't, nothing was ever said. It just happened. and we both started showing up early, trying to beat each other to the job site. And at some point, we're both getting there at 4:30. Nobody's showing up for 2.5 hours. Once you're there and you're in the thick of it, you feel so beholden to the team. They become your family because you see so much more of them than you do your own family.
I agree with you. I think there's a huge pride factor to it. But I also think there's an element of being rewarded all through it. And
Mm-hmm.
we've been trained. Like Buddy said, he doesn't have to work these Saturdays, but hey, Buddy, where were you this past Saturday?
Yep, I was
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, I guarantee you he was at work. And it's been like that for the last at least 3 or 4 weeks because I've talked to him and he's on the job site and I hear either equipment or people or something needing something from him. And we get rewarded for that stuff, Miss Julie. Like that becomes the expectation. It becomes like, oh man, you put in 60 hours last week. Whoa, you're the leader on this job site.
Well, I'm going
And
to
you
put in
want
65.
yeah, yeah. And next week I'll show up an hour before the superintendent just to let him know I can get here early too. And that's just the culture that we live in. Buddy, what do you think we need to do to change that or break that? Like where do we even start?
I really think that the last couple of generations that are coming in or coming up are gonna change that just because
Mm,
their priorities are a little different than mine. Doesn't mean that they're any better than mine or any worse than mine, but it's just the way I was brought up. And so that's all I know how to do. Sometimes on Saturday, that's the quietest day of the week, and you get as much done on a Saturday trying to catch up on paperwork and things like that that you didn't get a chance to do during the week while you were chasing your rear end just because there's so much going on. So
That's why a lot of superintendents show up at 4:30 a.m. in the morning too, 2.5 hours before work starts, so they can be up on their paperwork. Or
yeah,
yeah, it
I,
happens.
I try to tell the younger guys that if you'll show up a little bit early to get your day started, it'll be a lot better than just showing up straight up 7 or 10 after 7 or something like that. Because if people beat you to work, they're beating on your door before you even get a chance to sit down. And then it seems like that's the way the rest of the day goes. There's just a lot of people that don't get that. Doesn't make it right, doesn't make it wrong. It's just, if you read Henry Nutt's book, that's one of the things he's got in there is trying to tell people you need to show up early to get your day started right, planning and everything else that's associated with that.
Buddy, you said something that just really struck me. You're married 40 some years, just a week ago, right? 40-year anniversary.
Yes.
Certainly you did something right. You've got a saint at home too. But what did you do that so many of your peers weren't able to do? Because you made it work.
I don't know. I try to stay connected to it to know when my wife is starting to get a little short with me. It's what I tell the guys at work is we got to work together on these projects to get them finished. My wife, if she gets mad at me, she's mad for 3 days. I just know it's going to be 3 days. I got to figure out a way to get around it. But here on the job site, we got to be able to get over it and get back to work. And so it's knowing what she needs and trying to fight through that when I lose sight of it. It's like taking vacations and stuff like that. This community that we got now that we've never had before outside the fences, just like this. I tell Adam, hey, hold me accountable. Let's hold each other accountable. Let's do something. Let's talk. Let's spread this between companies. We're not trying to hire anybody away from anybody else. Let's just share ideas and try to make this thing a little better with culture and everything else. And so I see that as being a way to help change this thing to where it used to be just the superintendent had all the weight on them. And everybody else stay outside my fence. I don't need you in here. I can do this. And that was just being stubborn. Now there's more team, and we let the project managers and assistants and people like that help us. That's hard to do when you've been doing it the way I've been doing it, but there's value in that. As these young people come on, if they'll let their team work with them, they won't work like I did and have, and it'll be a lot better.
Buddy, did you notice a lot of times with your teams that it became y'all against the world? Did you see that a lot where your team it just and I feel like that's to our detriment, right? We're not really reaching out far enough with our circle and making our circle big enough because we end up fighting with the owners a lot of times and the trade partners a lot of times when we're like that, it seems. When it's us against the world, it's sort of you're looking for conflict. I don't see jobs getting any shorter and I don't see resources getting any greater either. And it's just I'm not sure what the answer is there, how we can do this, but there have been studies done, and working more than 40 hours for long term is bad for your health.
As well as you lose productivity. I think they say 55 hours for more than 2 weeks and you begin to lose productivity. Yeah,
Yeah, you're only producing like 30 hours worth of actual work, which you can do.
and those things are definitely not getting any better, Brian. In fact, they're getting worse, right? Owners want their jobs faster. Heck, we can't even get supplies these days. And so that the added stress of that just amplifies what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Buddy, when we were talking last time, we talked about what the world construction needed. And one of the things we all agreed on was kindness. It needed more kindness. And I'm wondering, as you reflect back on your career, how was kindness shown to you in the past? And how do you show kindness to others on the job site?
Man, what a question.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Trying to buy you a little bit of time here, buddy.
Yeah.
Ooh-wee. That was a slanger.
The old school superintendent thought they need to throw their hard hat, they need to flip out, even when they didn't really need to. They just thought they needed to cause conflict in order to keep everybody on edge. And I tried not to work like that. I would say my way doesn't work all the time, but it'll work 80 or 90% of the time. And if without having to flip out, and if I've got to raise my voice, something really big's happened on the job. And there's these younger guys that are coming on, they're hopefully not having to put up with that kind of stuff. But there's been things that I've seen, everybody's seen, that we should know it's not that way anymore. And it doesn't have to be that way to get a job finished. And when you see everybody working together, if there's a catastrophe on the job, let's say there's a big water leak or there's something, and everybody runs over and helps each other, that's when you know you're doing good. And that's what I try to tell them in a safety meeting is, hey, it may not be your problem, but it's our problem. And the next time it could be your problem and you need the rest of us to come help you. And so we got to work together. And so there's a lot of things that are different than they used to be. And the emphasis on culture and changing all of that, all the way down to bathrooms. You've done one on cleaning bathrooms, and Brian, and just showing the guys respect. Adam will tell you to learn people's names. I'm the world's worst at names. On my lean boards, I'll write the guy's name beside their activity, just so I remember to call them by name, and not the drywaller or whatever. But it's just little things. Little things sometimes go a long way.
That's kind.
That's a great tool also that you just introduced for everybody. So he writes their names next to their trade, next to the tasks that they're doing, so he can remember how to call them by name when he's seeing them. They don't know why he's got their names up there. They just think their names are up there, but that's his tool to help remember names, because I'm really bad at it too. And I'm going to steal that one, buddy.
Yeah, anything, and people, especially for a superintendent, that we see hundreds of guys in a year's time. And when they remember you and call you out by name, and you look at them and my mind's going spinning trying to remember somebody's name, I think everybody ought to have their name on their hard hat, where I make it a little easier for me. I change it up a little bit and they take their hard hat off and I'm in deep trouble. No vest and a hard hat. That's it. That's my kryptonite. So
if I can offer one of my secrets to remembering names here, when I first meet somebody, I will say their name 3 times and I will always associate their name with something else. That could, like, buddy. I used to have a one of them, my buddy, like the old school buddy dolls back in the day. Wherever I go, he go. So when I first met you, it was, hey, buddy. Oh, man, it's so good to meet you, buddy. I've seen a lot of you, buddy. And in my head, I've got this picture of this doll with these red overalls on. And so you will be forever linked to my buddy.
That's interesting.
Buddy ought to do an action figure. He really ought to, Builder Buddy.
The OG lean builder. Oh, yeah. I like it.
That's a good tip, though. I do the same thing. Repeat their name 3 times. We've read this somewhere, Adam. And like Ben, I think Big Ben the clock or Hannah Banana, just got to be careful not to call them the name that she was associated with them.
Hi, Hannah Banana.
Oops.
That's awesome.
Captain Morgan.
Yeah. I've got a superintendent that I work with at the Kennedy Space Center, and his name is Ben Morgan. And I didn't really have one pinned for him, and Buddy helped me nail Captain Morgan.
Man, well, my nickname is Winnie. So I automatically get the poo so often.
Oh, yeah. I could see that. I guess let me tell you how this struck me, Brian, because there's a couple of things here that are really important just to the structure of a day. I think we start at 6:30, which means you're probably there a little bit earlier. Then before it's lunchtime, boom, like you've answered so many questions. Buddy mentioned you got to get there before people get there. You'll never get anything done. And so, boom, it's lunchtime. And it's okay. What was I working on this morning when people started showing up? Let me finish that real fast. Hopefully, I finished that fast enough to get something that I've already packed for my lunch, maybe a peanut butter and jelly or a protein bar or something like that. Oftentimes, I forget lunch. And then we get going busy in the flow zone, as I call it, because we like to be there. And before you know it, it's 3:30 as people are coming in, turning in their daily reports and getting out of there. And you're like, wow, where did the day go? Maybe there's a quick conversation with your team as they start walking out the door, and it's 5 o'clock. And it's like the whole day is gone, and I did nothing but solve other people's problems, OPP. And I'm not down with OPP because you know me, right? And so then it's 7:20, 8:30. Then I start looking at the clock every hour, and it's, oh man, Brittany's going to be mad at me again tonight. Oh boy, I just missed dinner. Oh boy, now it's the kids putting them to bed now, and I hadn't seen them in a week. And it's because I leave before they get up and I get home after they go to bed. It's like my whole family life is the same thing that happened to my day. It's just gone. And so that right there brings up personal feelings that just resonate very strong. And I also have a saint at home. I'm almost half of what Buddy has been married, although she probably should have left me several times over again for this very reason and probably some others, but we won't go down that road today.
I'm just happy mine loves me. My
Amen.
saint loves me.
Amen.
I'm a lucky man.
The other thing that this brings up in my mind is a Christmas Eve. I want to say it was 2015, and I actually know this because I went back and picked up photos of it. I was in Spartanburg, South Carolina, and it wasn't quite 10:15. It was probably closer to 8:30, 9 o'clock at night on Christmas Eve, mind you. And I'm driving around all the project sites, and I'll be danged if we didn't have a storm that knocked over the temporary fence. And me, I like to dress nice on job sites because I was a project manager. So I got these slacks on, nice shoes, and I'm like out there wrestling this fence, trying to get it back up. The wind's still blowing a little bit, and I am just having one heck of a time. And I'm frustrated, man. Like I am like cussing all the people that left early. I'm cussing the people that put the dang fence in. I'm cussing the people that are driving by, not helping me, not stopping, and I just everybody. It's me against the world. And I'll never forget these guys from TICI stopped. They're a demo contractor here in Greenville, South Carolina. They stopped and got out of their truck. There were 4 of them. And within 20 minutes, we had that fence back, at least up somewhat, still a little bit rickety, but back up and at it. And I was gone out of that place by 9 o'clock. And I will forever be grateful for those 4 men from TICI. In fact, I bought this whole company lunch about 3 weeks later. I just continued to be thankful for those guys because there was no way that I was going to get that temporary fence back up in the right position on its own in order to leave a safe job site. And man, I tell you, when I first read this, Brian, at first I'm like, man, that was me. I started feeling bad for my wife and my family. And then when I read the part about the temporary fence, I got angry and I got pissed off where like, I remember me being the only one out there fighting the wind, fighting the rain in my nice slacks. And I just, and I'm going to dig up a picture and maybe try and get a picture in the show notes, but it pissed me off that night. And I had some angels come to my rescue, and boy, am I thankful for that. And so,
Adam, the
yes,
point though, those guys were also working until that time on Christmas
yeah,
Eve.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and
But they
willing to
were
stop.
kind.
Yeah, they offered me kindness. That's a
They sure
great point.
They
did.
did, but they're also part of this screwed up the craziness in this industry, the stuff that we don't even bat an eye at and accept as normal.
And at BMW around holidays, they're not making cars. That's the only time we're shutting down power
Mm-hmm.
or any other utility in order to actually get in there and work. And that's the other like kind of thing about what we do, right? You can't plug in electricity to an operating building. You got to shut it down. Same with drainage or water or
Yeah,
whatever it might be, the utility, like we can only be there when it's not being used. And so that just again puts another, you know, level of complication onto this whole thing because it has to be that way, right? But nothing says we can't 2 weeks before prepare ourselves for those shutdown, right? We can't take Christmas Eve a week before and be okay with that, right? There are some other things that we can start doing to start thinking outside the box that still offer kindness to people.
yeah. Those jobs exist out there all the time, right? And there's not a lot we can do to change that. Uh, I do think that some of the yeses that owners have been getting on some of their schedule requests probably should be no's. I think that we're not taking into account the fact that we don't have enough people often, and we need to take into account what we're doing to them because it's not okay. Even though we've done it for our whole career, we can't continue on and think that's just the way it needs to continue being because that's not growing, that's not getting better. It's just staying the same.
Yeah, in fact, on that job, we noticed that the client would often call with Friday fires,
Mm-hmm.
and those fires would drift into Saturdays and sometimes Sundays.
Mm-hmm.
So we got really smart and we said, hey, you, junior person, you're not coming in Monday or Tuesday. You're working Wednesday to Sunday. You okay with that? And we beat the system that way. And so, again, offering a little bit of a plug here, try it. Try to take one of your staff if you can afford. Like, can you stagger staff if you're working every single weekend?
Yeah, and superintendents, you got to take that hint and go home and not be there on a Saturday and let somebody else run with it, even if they stumble.
So, buddy, I got another question for you. You talked earlier about how you see this future generation being different than the one that you were raised in. I'll say the generation of our children, right? So I'm wondering, what advice do you give to those 25-year-olds that are just coming into the workforce that have this heightened awareness of their self and their place in the world and their noble aspirations to do good and give back and be kind, and yet here they are in the construction industry? How do you culturalize them to your job?
I'm training a couple of them now, and I want them to make me go home on the weekend where I'll tell them, hey, take the weekend off. I got it because I'm so used to doing it. And I keep thinking, and it hadn't happened yet, but I keep thinking they'll say, hey, I got this. You go home. You've been here the last 4 weekends or whatever. I got it. I'll call you if there's a problem. And uh, I'm trying to keep them from being the way I am. And I've done it so long. My wife knows she's not starting dinner until I actually get home because
Mm-hmm.
I'm leaving in 15 minutes,
True.
turns into 2 hours. And she did that. She learned that a long time ago. And I'll say, yeah, he ain't started dinner yet. Yep, that's right. You're in the door. I'm going to start it now. And I've been lucky enough too to surround myself with some guys it's hard to believe, but still got about 3 guys left that have been with me for 39 years doing
Wow.
this. And I don't have to be out there with that fence by myself. If they go home, but they'll answer the phone when I call. And you're treating them right when they'll pick the phone up. You get some new
That's
guys
so
that come on
true.
the team, and for some reason they know not to answer the phone. Uh, and so that's why these guys have been with me for 39 years. We've only worked at 2 or 3 other companies, but they've followed me, and you know, as a superintendent, we don't do this by ourselves.
Mm-mm.
None of this, or rarely put tools on anymore. And it's all the people around us that uh, do all the heavy lifting. And we got a lot to be fortunate of. And it's just a matter of making sure we take care of people so that they will stay with you, or they will put that extra effort in to help you get across the finish line.
So
That's the
unpack that a little bit. How do you do that? How do you show that? How do you honor them?
like for there's a saying that goes like, for all that I've done wrong, I must have done something right. Some of it you can't explain, other than if you weren't treating people right, they wouldn't keep coming back for more. And so I must be treating them right all this time. We've got old, real old together. They had more hair than they have now, and ours were a lot darker than it is right now back when we started this. And our kids have all grown, and getting to hear in the lean process too, when you get these guys talking to each other and you hear about football practice or games and soccer games. And we had a little deal on one of our jobs where we sit down and talked about kind of potential issues and things like that. And one of the guys said, man, my son's got practice at 5 o'clock on Wednesdays or whatever, and I really need to be there. And he said, why don't people speak up? That's all he had to do, and
Mhm.
we'll make sure he's there every Wednesday at 5 o'clock. If we can get people talking to each other and saying, we had another one that his wife was a teacher, and he had to help her get started every year or unpack things up at the end of the year, and he missed one of those. And it was like, we found out about a week later, dang man, why didn't you tell us? I'll make sure you're there. Whatever I got to do, I'll make sure you're there so that you don't make the same mistakes that I make.
I have a question for you. I wonder if it wouldn't, you talked earlier about how those young people, you're waiting on them to ask you to go home. I think maybe it'd be better if you set those standards for them and said, I'm going to go home, call me if something happens. And
I
it's okay
know,
for you to do that.
Yeah,
Uh,
Brian, you just said it a lot nicer than I was going to say it. I
I
was going to
know.
get it.
It's that way. It's hard to break old habits.
It
Uh,
is.
it really is.
yeah, for all of us. And I was the same way. But when we get a little better at delegating some of that stuff. And yeah, you can't delegate you can delegate tasks, but you can't delegate responsibility. You still own all the responsibility, buddy. But it's something that needs to happen. And we always tried to set up a schedule where, one of us from the team, if we had 3 or 4 of us, would take the Saturdays so that everybody didn't have to do it every week. We all ended up at the end of the job, everybody was there for 60, 70, 80 hours a week anyway. It's always the way it was because it's always such a race to the finish. You talked earlier about if you can get everybody on the same page. I had a job one time, and this was before I knew really very much about lean at all, but I was running it as the superintendent and project manager. It's about a $12 million data center revamp. It's moving a data center to a new place. It's basically what it was, but it had been a data center, but it was old. We found out one day, and this was near the end of the job, we had about 16,000 square foot in the data center floor and another 15,000 or so square foot in the offices around it. And we found out in the morning, about 2 hours before he was coming, that the building inspector was coming for our final. We didn't have any ceiling tile in. And everybody on that job, buddy, picked up ceiling tile. Everybody with ladders was putting it in. Everybody that didn't have ladders was carrying it. And we got it all done in an hour and a half, like 16 or 17,000 feet of it. And it was awesome just to get everybody doing that. Now, people screwed stuff up. We had to replace a few panels because not everybody, there's an art to everything that happens on a construction site. Don't believe that you're going to just pick it up immediately, because that's not how it works. But it's good to see when those things happen, when you can see the collaboration and stuff like that. I'm one of the people that always says we've always had good jobs, and those things that worked then still work. Lean is just a system for using those, for making sure we use those good things that help the job go better.
I wanted to tackle something you said too, buddy, about how you're waiting for one of them to offer go home. I got it on Saturday, and Brian suggests that maybe you could put a rotation in place. I would argue that as leaders, developing people is the most important thing we do. We're delivering jobs, that's true, but developing people that can ultimately succeed us, isn't it respectful to expect them to do this at some point, to mature into the role? And so maybe you do have to put the guardrail there and say, you got this, Joe, on Saturday. I'm a phone call away. But isn't it respect for people that would cause you to want to do that? The very basis of lean.
Yeah. I keep waiting for it. I don't know what it's going to take.
I keep waiting for my kids to do the dishes without me asking too, and that's not happening either, buddy.
1,000 times, Brian.
Now we use
1,000 times you have to ask
plastic
them.
I think the guys on salary think that, and it's the younger guys still that think that they are getting shortchanged as it is being on salary, and it's just they're not. Everybody agrees to work for a certain amount. When if you find out somebody's making more than you want to get upset about it, and you're the one that agreed to work for that amount, and you should honor whatever it is you're doing, and it shouldn't be so much about the money. It should be about the responsibility. And when that light bulb goes off with someone, that's when I know we're getting there. And it takes a while sometimes for that to happen.
Mhm.
Okay, everybody else is picking on you, buddy. It's my turn. Okay. Here's what I hear. I hear Buddy saying, I'm going to offer kindness to everybody around me so nobody else has to jump on this grenade. I've done it for so long. I'm just going to keep doing it. But what I think we're missing from this conversation is the kindness to Buddy, right? Where is the kindness to Buddy? And I know it's not something you need, it's not something you want, but it's something you deserve. And so,
Mhm.
what else could you be doing less waiting for them to speak up? What else could Buddy do in order to demonstrate kindness to himself?
I think I've got to figure out a way to um, hold myself accountable, have self care time. When you work like I work, you don't have any hobbies, you don't have anything that you do. And now at my age, when I am off, that's I'm not getting anything done because I'm recharging the battery for next week. And I need somebody like y'all to push me every now and then. There's another way to do it, and there's a lot of people that do it that way. And I just got so used to doing it this way that I don't know any other way to do it. But I've only got a few years left in this industry, and it's still not too late to teach an old dog new tricks.
Old dogs. Yeah, you even wrote a book here recently, buddy.
Yes,
Do
we
you-
did.
But I would just, again, drilling that point in, right? Buddy deserves that kindness that we talked about in the last episode. And you have and I'm sure Miss Julie and Brian will back me up on this. We're going to hold you accountable, buddy. I'm going to call you next Saturday, and you better not be working, sir.
Pick up a hobby.
There you go.
We picked on Buddy pretty hard, but I'm going to pick on Adam this time a little bit too. So let's dial into this anger a little bit that you felt, because anger is a result of something else usually, and not typically like a base emotion, right? Anger happens because of other things that have happened to you that cause you to feel that way about it, that cause an emotion. So what do you think was causing the anger there? What was it the unfairness of it, that it's Christmas Eve? What was
Oh,
going through your head?
I can tell you exactly what it was. It's every day the team leaves at 5 o'clock, and I'm the one stuck there who has to shut all the gates, lock the doors, close the whole thing up, and it was me every single freaking day. That's exactly where the anger came from.
So that kind of like where Buddy wasn't asking anybody, it doesn't sound like you were either, were you?
I was asking, I was just being told to do it. And
Oh,
it's interesting because I was the leader, the project executive on the project, and probably could have told anybody else to do it, but my servant leadership attitude and mentality would not allow me to do that.
Mhm.
And I would venture to guess that's probably what Buddy is struggling with as well, because he and I talk a lot and have a lot of that similar personality where we just want to serve others and give every bit of ourselves that we possibly can. It's interesting how that brews because it's like, hey, Buddy and I are making that choice to do it. Yet internally, at least from my standpoint, I won't speak for Buddy, there's a lot of resentment and anger there because nobody else is stepping up or speaking up or wants to be a part of the solution.
yeah, it's what we talked about last week when we said we're fake nice and that's lying. And then we go through and we have these
Toxic people.
surface relationships with these people because we don't say anything about it. How was your team on that job? Did y'all have a close relationship or a great working relationship? Or did you, at the end of it, were you ready to be on to hoping they were somebody else's problem after that?
Oh no, we'd certainly had our one or two toxic folks on the squad, but we still to this day talk to one another,
Okay.
look out for one another. Yeah, absolutely. Actually, one of the superintendents on the job is a 6 a.m. buddy of mine. I can call him pretty much any morning at 6 a.m. and he will pick up.
So where did the resentment flow? Maybe to the owners a little bit?
We had a
You
we
said
had
that they
a
were pretty bad about giving you Friday fires.
Yeah, we had a CM agent on that job. I will not tell you the name of the company,
It's
but
okay.
it
You
was
don't need to.
basically like a owner's representative that was
Mhm.
also a GC, and that's where all that resentment flowed to because they were always the bearer of bad news.
Sure.
Thanks for picking on me, Brian. I need that from time to time.
If you want to pick on me, I wrote the poem. I
No,
mean,
no.
I was the poster boy for that.
Tell us about the temporary fence experience because again, that's the one that resonated with me the most.
There's not one, right? There's more than one, at
Mm.
least. It's like you talked about being that last person on site. And it seems like Buddy said, and like you talked about, there's so much going on in the morning. It's just answering questions. Never stops. You don't get anything done. And then all these reports that the head shed sends down that they need that don't help you do anything, don't help you build anything. It just keeps them knowing what you're doing. It's frustrating, right? And it's so easy to get really jaded and just angry all the time and fed up with it. And it's a victim mentality. So you have to really watch that and stay out of that. And I think that's what happens a lot of times. People get in that victim mentality and then they end up moving on down the road just because they, where they are. And yeah.
That's something I'm struggling with in this conversation a lot, and I mentioned this last episode. Is I am there in the moment and I am the one suffering and I am somewhat the victim, but I can't stand when people have that victim mentality. So, where is the right guidance through that
It's
Need to
mindset?
just,
shift that conversation. You're seeing it as victimization. I'm seeing it as a lost opportunity to develop other leaders. All four of us on this call are servant leaders, and yet we've all missed opportunities to develop others, to show respect for people. And we're just assuming we've got to do it. We've got to get the job done and we've got to do it. It's not kind of me to ask them. How will you ever groom people up into your roles if you don't ask? Because you're showing them what you expect by never saying a thing. And that is to work 70 hours a week. That is to forego evenings with the family or holidays. That's what you're
yeah,
teaching them all.
yeah. That's
Wow.
what you're saying a leader does,
And that's
right?
not what you want your leaders to do. So you need to pivot that conversation from a victim mentality and I have to do it because I'm the servant leader to seeing it as an opportunity to develop other people through kindness
And
and
we've seen
respect.
that in construction where the last generations we had to do it, so the next generation needs to do it too. There's been a lot of that. It really
Stop
happens.
that.
These are
Buddy,
the dues we paid. Somebody else needs to pay them. That's how hazing continues and things like that. That should have been gone ages ago.
what do you think, buddy?
I think you tie it back to what we're all talking about, having to deal with mental health and different things like that, is that I stay just a fraction away from burnout just about all the time. And luckily I made it through without doing any substance abuse or drinking. I have some alcoholism in my family, but luckily it didn't hit on me. So I don't know how I was able to stay away from all that stuff, but doesn't mean that the weight of the world doesn't push me down 2, 3 days a week. And you just figure out ways to deal with things, but you probably shouldn't have to do that. And so that's why I'm trying. And one of the companies I work for, uh, let's say there was 9 superintendents, and me and a young guy were the only ones that hadn't had heart attacks.
Wow.
And it's like, um, it's how you deal with things. And I guess I'm able to shed enough of it to keep from having that happen. But that there's a lot of people that don't. And so I guess I've seen enough to try to keep others from falling into that statistic because it's rough. Nobody understands it really unless you're out here putting fences back up like Brian's talking about in his poems and some of the other stuff that he's done. It's perfect time to be talking about this to try to get other people to focus on it more so that they don't wind up like this when they're my age. Because there won't be superintendents my age, probably 20 or 30 years from now. It's just not the way these guys are headed. Everybody wants to be something else. I'm trying to show them you can make some good money. You can make some really good money at this without a college degree, but you've got to know what you got to do to put in. And I hope that there's a way to show them grace where they don't have to work like this.
Amazing, buddy. I love it. We are coming down to the end. Miss Julie or Brian, what else do we want to get out into this episode? Or Buddy?
These things are trauma, and it's okay to admit that they are. Missing your family, that's passing trauma down too when you're not there constantly for them. So we've got to stop that cycle, right? There's lots of divorces in construction and broken families and those kind of things. And we just got to stop that. We got to stop that cycle. And we need to make the work easier on the people that do it, number one, and make it easier for more people to join us doing it. Make that bar lower for people to be able to do the work, the actual work, and make it easier for people to do it. I think that's just such a critical thing. And that's going to make maybe the times go down and maybe some of the stress levels go down. If we can figure out ways to continue to make this work easier and easier to do for people, I think that's going to help take some of that pressure off.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Buddy, first, I'm honored to be in this conversation with you. Thank you for bravely stepping into it. And Brian, for your poetry as always. I guess I would just reemphasize to all four of us that self-care is really important. And we need to put our oxygen masks on first before we help others. And Buddy, it's amazing to me. You've worked so long in this industry and avoided heart attacks and alcoholism and substance abuse and divorce. You're like the only one I know.
The unicorn.
You are. So whatever you did, I would encourage you to think about what have been your healthy coping mechanisms, because there's a lesson there, because something you've done, it's not just marrying the right woman, but that obviously has been a big factor, but something about the way you work and the way you show kindness to others has made a difference. And I'm curious to know what that is. Maybe you'll write a poem about it.
Oh, and I bet everyone that's worked with Buddy would be able to trumpet those same feelings.
Mm-hmm.
That's beautiful. Love it.
Talking about heart attacks, I just walked an hour and a half ago with an equipment supplier that had a Widowmaker in January.
Oh.
And he happened to be 8 minutes from a hospital when he started having chest pains. And he's still recovering from all of that. And it's out there. And there's worse than that going on, just like the suicides and things like that. And it's just things you don't think about. We haven't talked about this. And I remember trying to let my company know years ago that if we have a bad job, if we have something going on, doesn't mean we're weak. It just means we're human. And keep your finger on the pulse. You can hear people when they get quiet. You can hear the issues if you listen when your people get quiet or something's not right. And keep your finger on the pulse of your people, because that's where you lose it. You just take everybody for granted. And we never talked about stuff like this. And it's there. And if we talk about it, maybe we'll do something about it. And that's why I'm the world's worst introvert, and I hate stuff like this. But if it takes something like this to help somebody else, I'll do whatever I need to do.
So we
Thank
love the
you.
most about you, buddy. Yes, thank you so much. All right, Miss Julie, thank you so much. Your wisdom and collateral damage perspective, I love how you put that, is so appreciated and so much needed. Thank you. Ranger Winnie as well. Your writings are just phenomenal. I am grateful for that. They make me a better person through self reflection. So thank you for that. And now it's me and you, buddy. I'm going to ask you a question and I'm diving off the screen and you're going to take us out. You're going to close this thing for us. What does the utopia of construction look like? What does the perfect construction land look like?
That's a good question. If I knew the answer to that, I would take that to Shark Tank and retire. But it's going to take collaboration. It's going to take people working together. It's going to take knocking all the fences down, letting more people in the boat with you, and sharing responsibility and delegating. All things that I have a real hard time doing. But that's what it's going to take to turn this thing around.